Small towns are usually tight-knit, quiet communities with not much crime. Or so they want you to think. It seems like some of the creepiest of stories come from small towns all over the world. It seems no matter where you live in this world, a horror story is waiting for you, just around the corner. Are you from a small town? How about a big city? No matter where you're from, I am always looking for fresh new stories. If you have a story you would like to submit to the show, go to swampdweller.net and send it on in. I'd love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp. Hit that like button, subscribe, and comment down below. Now, let's get into these creepy, allegedly true stories from small towns. I live in eastern Tennessee with our husband and 3 dogs. We live in a lakeside home in Greenback. If you are familiar with the area, you have likely heard of Hope Castle. The castle is about a 2-minute hike through the woods from my place. The story I'm about to tell isn't recent and is from a time before the castle was open to the general populace. It was early in the year 2000 and the night was cold. I was unable to sleep, so I took Freddy, my English Mastiff, for a walk in the woods. Keep in mind, he's about 200 pounds. We were walking by a little creek near the castle when I heard howling, closer to a cry in truth, in the distance. This was the point where my dog began acting nervous, which is highly unlike him. I saw a crack in the castle wall, and upon entering it, I was overtaken with a smell of rust and iron. The smell was bad enough it made my eyes water. I began walking around, searching for the source of the awful smell, at which point I entered a room with light. The source of light was 3 tea-light candles in the room. I found an 8-foot-tall half-human, half-dog-looking creature. The creature smelled of death, and I immediately turned to run, but behind me, I could hear the creature screeching my name. The sound was terrifying. I tried running again, but my dog just wouldn't move. The creature ran toward us, at which point Freddy lunged at it. He tried latching onto the creature's chest. However, the creature threw Freddy at me. It was at this point, Freddy got up and began running with me. Behind us, I could still hear the creature screeching my name. This continued as I ran all the way home, until, finally, I slammed the door behind me, and the creature's screams and screeches suddenly fell silent. Examining my brave Freddy, I noticed he had 3 claw marks in the side of his breast. I took Freddy to the vet, and they had to euthanize him. By morning, he had black mold growing inside his wounds. Yes, you heard that right. Black mold. Shortly after this, we cremated Freddy and took his ashes to his favorite lake. 19 years later, I opened my window and heard the screeches of that creature again. The next morning, I looked at my house to find 3 claw marks across the front door. And now, I'm really not sure what to do. I haven't heard it or seen any more scratches since then. I live in Leavenworth, Kansas, and my story starts like this. I'd been watching creepypasta videos for 2 or 3 weeks and was on a skinwalker kick, which was natural as my mother is noticeably Native American, and my siblings and I have Native American in us as well. I'm driving my brother to work when I make a turn down a road shortly after sunset and notice far off in the distance an outline in the woods. I didn't focus too much on it and brushed it off. On the way back, I took the same way home. Everything is chill. Later on, when I need to pick my brother up again, on the way home, I notice an outline in the woods again. This time, however, it is more dog-like in shape. When we're about 300 yards away from the creature, I quickly identify it as a coyote. I start to become overcome with a shakiness akin to the kind when you're hunting. I'm an experienced and self-taught hunter, and the animal you've been chasing is within killing sight. At about 100 yards from the creature, It comes out, tail tucked between its legs, trotting towards us. About 40 to 50 yards away, something just seems incredibly off. I noticed. I can see its eyes, as though it were daylight and they were completely black. As we were moving past the creature, it just stands there, staring at us with this weird and menacing look. The stare was weird. It was as if it was looking inside of us. I had already passed the creature and was roughly 100 yards away again when I stopped. The creature was still there staring at us. I pulled a U-turn when the thing trotted off in the other direction, still staring, as though it wanted us to follow it. We drive at a dead-end street with another patch of woods. We were turning right to follow the creature when it vanished. I was going to hop out and check what was up, but my brother, who had an extremely bad feeling, told me not to. We left after this quickly. I'm not sure what was up, but I don't let it stop me from enjoying hunting or the wilderness. Maybe the thing was just messing with us. Maybe it was up to something sinister. I'll likely never know. I'm a maintenance technician for a residential property in Colorado, and I'm also Native American. I live in a very urban area near a wooded area from my city, so part of my job is to handle emergency calls after hours when all hits the fan. Anyway, I go on call, and the first few nights were really quiet. This would change one night around 2:30 in the morning when I got an emergency call for a hot water heater leaking. I responded quickly as I live on the property, so it doesn't take me too long to head over. The caller ended up having to replace a hot water heater, so I started walking to our shed where we keep spare part heaters. When, all of a sudden, I see this huge dog-like thing just glaring at me from 30 feet away. It had these very yellow eyes, and I make sure I know where this dog is as I'm solo on the job. While I'm loading up the hot water onto a dolly, I notice this dog kinda looks disfigured. It's about 20 feet from me, and it starts making these noises I've never heard before. I start to get a little nervous, but I continue doing my job, so I'm walking the water heater over the dolly across the property, and I have the feeling I'm being watched. I start to hear the sounds of hoofs on the road, when I look behind me, and this dog has these horse-like hoofs. I end up freaking out, drop the hot water heater, and flee into a vacant unit. I make sure the unit is secure, all doors and windows are locked, etc. I pull out my knife and flashlight. I try to take up a tactical position in this vacant unit and remain as quiet as I can. I stay in this position for about 2 minutes, just listening when I start to hear these hoofs outside the window. I start thinking about how I can withdraw from this situation when I hear this tapping on the window, which soon starts to get louder as it goes on. All of a sudden, it just randomly gets cold in this vacant unit. I was able to see my breath in the unit, so I turned the heat on early in the day to 68 degrees. This is when I realized there is a patio door that leads to the main road. I move quickly, open the door, and book it as fast as I can out of the unit. I'm running as fast as I can, and I can hear these hooves running right behind me. They are gaining on me at this point, and I'm in full flight mode. This thing starts to make these horrible noises as it tries to get me, and I'm trying to think so hard of where I can get that is safe. I decided to try and make it to our maintenance office, as it has power tools I believe I could use to defend myself with. Unfortunately, I didn't make it to the maintenance office. I end up literally running into a passing squad car responding to a noise complaint. The cop jumps out and asks me if I'm okay, and at this point, I'm out of breath. That's when, from the wooded area, we hear this bloody scream. The cop radios in for additional cars to respond, and I tell the officer exactly what had happened. She looks at me with this look that I could tell that she thought I was crazy. I told her to follow me to the vacant unit though, and I'd show her the imprint in the dirt. She does this and her mouth hits the floor when she sees the print. About 6 or more squad cars respond and they end up going through the wooded area, but they come up dry. They don't find anything. But every once in a while, when I'm out on work orders or just smoking a cigarette, I get this feeling like something is watching me, and the hairs stand up on the back of my neck. This only happened less than an hour ago, and I still feel pretty creeped out by the whole thing, so I'll keep this as short as possible. A dude followed me around the supermarket, blatantly stared at me on several occasions, and stood right behind me in my personal space in the line for the self-serve checkouts. He then collected his coins and items one by one when he finished checking out at the register right beside mine, before me, and then waited out front with a friend, another male he was also shopping with but separately. This meant I had to walk past them and get into my car before they started walking off. As I was reversing out, but had to stop to let passing traffic by, a third younger male walked up beside my vehicle and stood next to my window waving, smiling. He had brown rotten front teeth, and saying something I couldn't understand. I waved back, damn desire to be polite, but I didn't wind down my window and reversed out as calmly as I could manage. As I drove out of the car park, walked to the other side, and stood by my car again as I drove out. Feeling spooked, I drove to another supermarket and sat in their car park for about 10 minutes. I then went inside and did another small grocery shop there. Different supermarkets equal different sales. We all know the gist. When I finished, I packed up my car and began to drive off, only to see the man who approached my car standing opposite to the store. He ran over to the other male, literally ran, who had a hoodie on. With the hood up, grabbed his phone off of him and began speedily what I can only assume was texting on the phone as I drove past him. I took a weird route home in an attempt to make sure no one was driving behind me, for the last few turns anyway, but I still feel gross. When I checked my car, I noticed that one of my tires had a small centerpiece of the hubcap was missing. I'm hoping it just fell off at some point and I didn't notice. I'll go back to work tomorrow. Mondays, am I right? And we have to park on that street. My place of work is 1 to 2 blocks from those supermarkets. I live in a tiny rural town, so I'm not feeling excited about the idea. Being raised by a police officer, my gut instinct is usually pretty spot on, and this whole incident left me feeling pretty gross. I don't know about you guys, but it really freaked me out. Alright, so this occurred roughly about 2 years ago, around August 2014. My husband, whose nickname is Skeeter, and I had just moved down to a small town in Nevada from the bustling city of Los Angeles, California. For safety and practicality purposes, I will not disclose the exact location of our residence, but I will say the area's population is definitely below 900 people. We'd moved just shortly after the birth of our son, having decided that the small town life was for us, a young couple and young parents. We'd moved just shortly after the birth of our son, having decided that the small town life was for us as a young couple and young parents. Jobs are easier to come by. The pace is slower, expenses are reduced, and it would be the perfect place to raise our family. Surprisingly, the only concern I'd had about the place was the fact that everything was so spaced out, with the nearest house being a little over a mile away. In case of an emergency, my neighbors could be of little to no assistance. Skeeter, however, had no qualms about this, as he was a rather private person, and the idea of slight seclusion didn't particularly bother him. We moved on a hot summer day. Now, in this incident, we had only been in town for maybe 2 weeks and were still settling in. It was a warm Friday night somewhere around 11 p.m., and my husband was in the town working security at the bank. Our son Julius was only 3 weeks old and very colicky, and on this night he was just inconsolable. No matter what I did, he wailed his little lungs out. I was stumped for what to do, so I decided to walk with him and around in circles. Sometimes, if that didn't work, I would even take him on car rides, and those always seemed to soothe him. I would have driven the baby around in the car, but Skeeter drove himself to work that night, and we only had one vehicle between us. I should mention we have 2 dogs, a 2-year-old German Shepherd named Titus and a 4-year-old Maltese Dasha. I figured they would need a walk before I managed to calm Julius down, and we all turned in for the night. One thing about Dasha and Titus is that they are very overprotective of me and the baby, and will raise the alarm at the smallest of threats. It made me feel safe walking alone outside in the pitch dark with my newborn, miles away from any other human beings and the security of my husband. I threw on their leashes and strapped the bawling Julius to my chest, heading out the back door and making sure my keys and phone were in my pocket. There's a winding, unpaved trail that's just a few feet from the left of our back porch and leads into a thatch of trees. It's about a 10-minute walk down, but I wasn't afraid due to the fact that I'd grown up taking hikes in the Topanga Canyon and going on camping trips in Big Bear as a kid. The walking seemed to do the trick, as within a few minutes the baby quieted down and my dogs finally relaxed. They were always tense when Julius was fussing. I was just about to pass the wild shrubbery and tall grass that you see right before you get to the first when I felt resistance on the other end of the leads. I glanced back at Dasha and Titus, who were paused and looking off right up the path at full attention. As a mother and female, this of course made me very paranoid, and I gently tried to coax them to keep walking. Both took a few steps, but Dasha stopped again, and I could see her fur standing on end. Titus began to growl, which freaked me out because he was the more docile of the two, and I'd rarely ever heard him growl. This time, I hissed my command and they hesitantly moved forward. At this point, I was beyond petrified, as I had no idea what the hell was out there and causing my dogs to go crazy. Even if I did, what the hell could I do with the baby? 2 dogs and no protection. I decided to turn around and go home. Forget this whole situation, right? Wrong. We had been heading southwest, back in the opposite direction that we had come for about 2 minutes, when a figure stepped onto the weathered path. Literally, there are no words to describe the icy, potent fear that went through my veins at that small figure just a few feet in front of me. I'm about 5'2", give or take, and this person, or whatever the hell it was, is several inches shorter than me, maybe about the height of an average 10-year-old. The creepiest part is that this thing had on a pig mask, with a mouth crudely carved into a crooked smile and smears of dark liquid all over the face. I don't think it was blood, but I digress. We're just standing there, staring at each other for what was about 30 seconds when all of a sudden, Dasha and Titus launched themselves at this pigman, snarling and snapping at him aggressively. It was almost rabid, and it should have scared a normal person, but it didn't seem to scare him. This pigman, which is what I'll be calling it from now on, looks down at my dogs in an almost curious fashion, and I'm thanking God that the leashes are keeping them from seriously wounding this individual. I'm also trying to think of how to get myself out of this situation without freaking out. To my surprise and happiness, the baby hadn't gotten scared and started crying from all the ruckus, and was just cooing softly. This pigman finally seemed to notice my baby on my chest, and I guess hatched some type of morals. It made a weird sort of wailing sound and darted back to the way it came. I hear it disturbing the grass as it walked further into the wild greenery. I didn't wait to see anything else from or about it and noped the hell out of there, hauling my ass all the way home. It's true what they say about adrenaline. It makes you do some amazing things. Here I am still recovering from childbirth, with a baby strapped to my chest and 2 dogs, and I'm on a full sprint through the almost pitch black darkness. I'm surprised that I didn't trip or hurt myself. The usual 10-minute walk only took about 3, and when I got home I double-locked the doors, closed all the windows and curtains, and waited for my husband to get home. Titus and Dasha are troopers, my little saviors, and I thank God for them protecting my family. I would have never known that thing was there until it was too late, and if it had not been for them, I don't know how things would have turned out. They got extra love and treats for months after that, and to this day, I never go outside alone, especially at night. I don't know who or what the hell that pig-masked freak was, but I'm just glad I got my dogs, my baby, and myself away from it. Obligatory backstory. I live in a tiny northern Kentucky town. When I say tiny, I legitimately mean microscopic. It's a nice neighborhood, if a little stereotypically southern, to be honest. It's got a low crime rate and everyone knows everyone. Lots of fundamentalists, lots of pickup trucks. Not my particular cup of tea as an adult, but on the whole, it seemed like a very safe place to grow up. You walk to school because there are no school buses. The city is so small, you can get from the end to the other in about 20 minutes on foot. Big football town though. Not much else to do really. The biggest points of interest are the church, the football field, and the Kroger. This happened to me when I was 16 years old. It was a typical Friday night, and I was home watching and hanging out with my brother, who was about 9 years old at the time. We recently had new neighbors move in next door, and their son, Austin, was my brother's age. They became best friends pretty much immediately. There's always a football game on Friday nights in season, and the whole town is there. I wasn't partial to the games. Once I had seen one, honestly, I'd seen them all. I would still occasionally walk down to the field and meet up with buddies to do something after, but that was about the extent of it. The phone rings and my brother answers it. I'm quite sure we were playing a video game of some kind around that time. I'm fairly sure it was probably Super Smash Bros. Melee on the old GameCube. He was intimidatingly good for his age, and we had a nice sibling rivalry going on. He always played with Roy while I used Marth. These matches were absolute nail-biters. He hangs up and tells me Austin is at the game with his folks, and he asks if we can please go down and get him. I didn't want to be down there in a huge crowd of sweaty rednecks, and I told him so. His mom says he can't walk home without us. He wants to come home and hang out, and we can do a 3-person tournament. After much begging and pleading, I finally say okay, let's go. It's a 10-minute walk maximum, and at least we wouldn't have to stay. We'll go down and grab Austin, and then we're noping it back here to play some Melee. We head up our dead-end street, hang a left, and start down the main road. The sports complex is on this road. It's just at the bottom of a hill. It was about twilight, and from the top of the hill we could already hear the marching band and the cheering. I didn't see many folks around, but nothing looked unusual. I really didn't expect to see anyone. Pretty much everyone was down at the game. Looking ahead, I could see cars parked lining the street, with the bulk of them right by the turnoff of the sports complex. He's doing the typical kid brother thing as we walked. Hey Jen, do you know owls can turn their heads almost completely around? Hey Jen, I and Dawson had a shoe throwing contest, and my shoe went so far I almost couldn't see it anymore. Hey Jen, look at this flower, it's awesome. At about the halfway mark, I see a gold SUV pull up across the street just opposite of where we were walking. It sits for about 10, maybe 15 seconds, and then a man gets out, just as we are passing by so that he's behind us. He's an older guy, in his mid-40s if I had to guess. In retrospect, he screamed creeper. Weasel face, tall and wiry. He had this weird smile or sneer, I guess you would call it. At the time, however, I didn't think twice. Of course, just a guy going to the game, probably meeting up with his family. My brother was on my left, and I was on the right. We keep walking normally. After about 30 or so seconds, I hear shuffling. I turn around out of reflex just to glance at what's going on. This guy is gaining on us. Okay, no big deal. He's probably just trying not to miss anything. He'll probably walk right on past. I would have loved to keep a brisker pace myself, but I had the kid brother in tow, and his 9-year-old legs just couldn't handle speed walking. We keep going as usual, but now I have made a mental note. A little more time goes by, maybe a minute, and I start thinking, wonder why he hasn't breezed on by us. The guy sure looked like he was in a hurry, so I turn around again. This man is right behind us. I mean, close enough for me to see the creepiest smile or sneer I've ever seen on his face. Only he wasn't behind us per se, he was directly behind my brother, and when I happened to glance back, he had his arms out in front of him, like he was trying to reach for my brother, and almost had a hold of his upper right arm. I caught this guy nearly in mid-snatch. I reached out my left hand and put it around my brother's back. Probably 5 seconds went by, but it felt like a lot longer than that. After I had my arm barrier, I do a quick scan of the street. There is no one else around, no witnesses, no help. I'm only 16 and this guy's a lot bigger than me, so what the hell am I gonna do? I lean down and say as quietly and as calmly as I can, "Come on, Ross, let's get there. I bet I can go faster than you." I start to speed walk and so does my brother. I have my arm around his back and I'm half pushing him, rushing him along as fast as he can. I see the sports complex and it's just down the hill. We are about a minute or so away at most. After about another 30 seconds or so, I'm not quite sure, the whole thing seemed to go by in slow-mo. I turned around, and this guy is speed walking too. He's matching our pace to keep right behind my brother and he's gaining again. Now I really start to panic. He's really after us. There's no other explanation now. I don't know him and I almost caught him grabbing the kid. Now he's almost in grabbing distance again. He's picking up speed and he's smiling. Well, sneering. It was a predatory look if I've ever seen one. I turn back around and I see we are so close to the stadium, so freaking close. If we can just get down there a little more, the property opens up and there will be people everywhere. I have to get down to all those people, right now. I try to sound calm, but I'm sure I didn't at this point. "Let's run, Ross, come on, I'll race ya." We take off running and I'm looking more at him, that he's ahead of me now, which makes me feel better. I'm trying to keep him in my sight the entire time. He thinks it's a game. He smiled and started running his little heart out. I remember feeling a tiny speck of relief. Oh good, he doesn't know he's about to get raped and murdered. He's running pretty fast though. He's in it to win it. I see the entrance of the stadium and I think we gotta be home free by now. I turn around and this guy is running after us. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. I knew that beyond a shadow of a doubt that this guy is only running to catch us. Well, not us per se, but my brother. He started to gain, but he's not close enough yet. I whip back around and sped up to my personal max speed, and of course, the kid pumps his own. Once again, I'm looking directly at him, more than the street in front of me, so I can't be sure he's still there with me. I hear the thuds on the pavement and now I know he's getting close and my heart was sending electrical currents of fear to the rest of my body. And just as I heard him coming up right behind us, we hit the stadium grounds. It was a sharp left turn and bam! People. There were people everywhere. It was halftime and the adults were out in the entrance area smoking and talking. The view of the entranceway and all the people were obscured by a stone archway on the street, marking the stadium grounds. I had never been so happy to see a bunch of sweaty rednecks in all my life. The guy came right behind, and the second he turned the corner after I saw the people and he panicked. I could see the surprise and fear in his eyes. I had turned around at that moment to see where he was, and I looked right at him, and locked eyes with him in this beautiful moment. He looked at everyone, looked at me, looked at my brother, and walked away, back the way we had all come. Ross was out of breath but still nudged me to go collect Austin. I said, "Give me just a second, man." I peeked around the stone archway and watched this guy walk, not run, back up the street. I stood there and watched him walk all the way back up the hill, walk across the street, and get back into his SUV and drive away. I think that's when it fully hit me, of the very real situation we were just in, and the very real danger. That guy was there to get my brother. What's more, he probably would have, had we not made it to the stadium in time. The crowd spooked him and most likely that's what saved my brother's life. We found Austin, but I made the whole gang wait until the game was over and caught a ride with his folks. No burden on them, we lived right next door. I was shaken up for the rest of the night and for a couple of days after. This kind of town is the last place in the world you have thoughts about being snatched in. I also never told anyone. I never told my parents, I never told my brother. He's almost 20 years old now, and he could probably handle it, but I just never saw a reason to give him a complex about something that happened years ago. I also never told the police, and I have no idea what happened to that gold SUV guy. I don't know if he lived around here or far away. I don't know if he's been caught, went to jail, or if he's still out there somewhere. I do know for certain that he was there to kidnap my brother that day. I don't know what kind of dark plans he had for him, but then again, I don't care to dwell on it. I don't know if I did the right thing or the wrong thing, or just how close my brother came to whatever the SUV guy had in the works, but I don't care to dwell on that either. I can tell you, however, that there was once a time in my life in which I meaningfully uttered the phrase, "Thank God for sweaty rednecks." Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed these allegedly true, creepy experiences from small towns, be sure to hit that like button, as it helps me out a ton. If you're new to the channel, why not subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss a new video, as I upload them almost every single day, and all things natural and supernatural. Some of these stories are definitely really creepy. Being from a small town myself and living in small towns pretty much my whole life, I can really resonate with a lot of these stories. Especially that last one. I've had a very similar experience to that myself. If you guys have ever had a creepy story or a creepy experience that has ever happened to you, and you want to share it on a future video, be sure to send it in at swampdweller.net, or the email you can find in the description down below. I'd very much enjoy sharing your story with everyone here in the swamp. I am currently still working on my 100,000 subscriber special, so stay tuned for that. I'm hoping to have it out soon. It's got a pretty funny skit in it that I think you guys are going to enjoy. Comment down below if you made it all the way to the end of the video. Let's confuse everybody in the comment section by just saying the word pineapple. I'll see you guys soon with another creepy video.